Welcome to the third instalment of Passing the Gloves. It's a pleasure to be on here today, hosting the conversation with England and Chelsea goalkeeper Carly Telford. So, Carly, welcome.
Thank you.
How are you doing? All okay?
Yeah, all is good. I haven't got the gloves on officially, but and it doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon. But no, I'm excited to chat today. Be cool.
Perfect. And how have you been coping with the lockdown as it is?
Yeah, it's been interesting. It's probably the longest period of time I've been away from a team as such, because I guess if I'm not at Chelsea, I'm usually on international duty at England, and then even in pre-season, when you get a bit of time off, it's usually about 3-4 weeks. It's never been this long, so yeah, it's been interesting to say the least. Initially, I was like, woohoo, bit of time by myself, can do some training and then it slowly got very boring. So yeah, it's just been a case of occupying, like everyone, just trying to get through each day and trying to keep yourself entertained, trying to keep yourself fit, not going in the cupboard of treats too many times, or earning the right to do so. But yeah, and then just waiting. It's just a big waiting game. Like we're basing, I think the WSL is basing themselves on what the Premier League do. So it's a lot of just waiting to see what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks and how it's going to unfold, really.
What sort of things you've been doing?
Growing vegetables, would you believe?
Yes.
It was kind of like, so where I'm at, my partner's house, they just moved in, parents just moved in there, so we're kind of just like helping them with the gardening. And what started was going to be a small 3-week project with the initial lockdown has turned into like 7-8 weeks of tearing down things, new fences, building a decking, and some pretty impressive vegetables. To be fair, I thought they'd all die, but they're all pretty alive, and we're trying to control them and discussing how we're going to eat them all. When 10 cauliflowers turn up, and what do you do with 10 cauliflowers? So if anybody's got any recommendations for recipes for what you do with 10 cauliflowers, 10 cabbages, pretty much a partridge in a pear tree, that would be great.
Brilliant.
Thanks.
You can get them out the front of the house and sell them to a passing train.
Exactly.
Brilliant. And have you been having much contact in terms of Chelsea and your programme, keeping you ready for when we are ready to go back?
Yeah, loads. Chelsea have been brilliant, to be fair. Lots of Zoom calls, lots of kind of checking in on how we are physically as well as mentally. I think they've been really good at putting on lots of yoga and meditation, finding ways of helping us kind of break up maybe the monotony of the sessions always being the same, but kind of with no outcome, which is what we all kind of aspire to have at the end of the week is a game. There's something that you're training for, but at the minute we don't know what we're training for. Hopefully to go back to a league, but kind of that thing you get up for every day to have the big outcome at the end of the week, which is to go for the 3 points or running a couple, whatever it may be, is kind of been taken away from you. So it's kind of just become very personal. It's your own goals, your own ambitions from week to week. And again, we're limited with equipment. So I've got a couple of kettlebells, a 10 and a 20K, a couple of bands, and then a football pitch, which obviously we're only allowed to go out once a day. And that's changed obviously recently with Boris announcing yesterday we can go out kind of a longer period, but still it's having that kind of thing that we all live for as athletes, as professional athletes, and wanting to have something at the end of it, which we're looking to achieve. And it keeps getting kind of pushed back. But hopefully we can get back to the league and all this will be worthwhile. So it's just about keeping fit and staying focused. And yeah, Chelsea have been brilliant. I don't think we could have asked for anything more. They've lent us kind of equipment and bikes and as well as the FA. Dawn made sure we all had bikes so that we weren't kind of just running around the streets all the time. So yeah, we've been looked after really well, I guess, and can't complain at all.
No, that's great. And I suppose like the fact that you're in a team sport is good because you've got your teammates to lean on and you've got that support network around it. So probably quite fortunate from a elite athlete's point of view that you do have that network around you, which obviously a lot of people probably don't.
Yeah, no, it has been fantastic, and it's just kind of listening to the experiences as well, because I have a lot of friends in different teams as well, Man City, Arsenal, etc. So it's kind of seen maybe what their protocols are, what they're doing, and how they're coping, and using sometimes what they've been doing, even if it's stuff that hasn't been about training, whether it's learning something new or reading or just trying different things to cook, and what they're doing. It's kind of just leaning on those people to see how they're coping in lockdown and what their strategies are, which is really nice. It's been nice to spend some time with family as well, which we don't always get.
Yeah, definitely.
With us all kind of probably living away from family and friends at different clubs. So in lots of respects, there's been some hard things, but there's lots of positives when you sit and reflect. And I doubt we'll ever probably get this time again, or I will, until I retire maybe. But even then, it's not reality, because I'll have to get a proper job and work. And at the minute, it just feels like I'm not really doing that. I don't know if you can class going out for a run as work, but yeah, it's a strange time, but one I guess we'll look back on and hopefully have lots of fond memories of it.
Yeah, no, that's great, and I think it's brilliant because it gives us an opportunity to, I suppose, do this kind of thing as well. So I know obviously me and you work closely together from the international point of view.
Yeah.
But and I listen to your stories and your experiences and where you've come from and how you've got to where you are now. Yeah. And so I'm fortunate I get to hear those stories. So this is a great opportunity for others to hear it and for us to find out a little bit more about your career. So over the next little period of time, what we'll do is we're just going through a bit of a timeline, really. So for the viewers watching, I'm sure there'll be goalkeepers, there'll be some parents, there'll be coaches, there'll be managers watching, who will have a real interest in, hopefully.
Just me and you.
Could be worse. Who will have a real sort of keen want to understand what they need to do as players or parents or coaches to help their daughters, their sons, the players they work with achieve what you've achieved in your career, which, I mean, I know we'll outline it as we go along, but it's been a long journey with some I suppose ups and downs as everyone experiences in their career, and some brilliant exposure to some once in a lifetime experiences, I suppose, which we've all sort of been exposed to when you get to work in the elite level of the game. So if we was to take it right back to the start, when you started playing football, how did it all start? What got you into it?
So my dad was a typical Sunday league player. He makes out that he was decent, but I later found out that he wasn't. No, he was actually not a bad player. But on the weekends he used to go down, and my mum used to obviously take us with him, or if he was in charge of babysitting, he'd take us with him, and a lot of the kids would just play together. And thankfully I joined in with some of the lads. I used to live in London. And mum and dad moved down there when there was a big construction boom. Dad was a painter and decorator, so I went down there. So I had a lovely Cockney accent back in the day. But my dad's best mate, he had two sons and a daughter, but the two sons is who I used to play with all the time, and they were big West Ham fans. So whenever we used to go around there or go to football, I used to be kicking a ball with them in the back garden.
Yeah.
And that's how it started. I was about 7 years old. We later moved back up north about a year after that, and again when I joined my first school, one of the lads there luckily had a Cockney accent as well, so the pair of us were kind of a bit odd together. a couple of Cockneys in a Geordie school. But it was a way in, because everyone kind of wanted to know why I spoke differently. And then quickly, sooner or later, I was playing with the boys in the playground, and I lost my Cockney accent, and I quickly became a Geordie. But yeah, that's how I started playing. I was just in the playground, and luckily enough for me, our head teacher at the time of the primary school, Shield Row, he had no kind of qualms about a girl playing in the team. And I played outfield, and me and a lad called James Lee, he was the home captain, I was the away captain when we went to different schools. Our schools visited us, and I was a winger. And I remember going to our first school, and all the parents, you could hear them all saying like, "Oh my God, they've got a girl playing for them." And I was a little bit nervous, and I'd never heard that before, because as far as I'm as well, the lads and the parents were quite happy for me to play football. But there I was, and quickly when I scored the winning goal in my first game, I quickly knocked that on the head, and and I just loved it. Like I'd be out they'd be knocking on my door after school. I'd go around there with my football. I'd play until like the lights come on in the street, and then we try and play in the street for as long as we can. I remember telling, we'd all kind of fib to our parents that someone else got an extra half an hour to stay out, so we could stay out longer and play football. And then we'd go in the garden. Like it was just endless. Like I just spent my whole time. waiting for the lads to knock on the door or to ring the house phone, and my mum would be like, Craig, it's Carly on the old school, like pick up the phone. And like used to have to ring people's mum and dads and ask if you could speak to them, and then we'd all meet down the field. And yeah, it was just and that's how it started. I loved it. And I wouldn't change it for the world. I love playing with the boys, and some of them now, they still reckon they were the one that started me on my career. They still hold to it. And one of my really best mates, Craig, he came out to the recent World Cup with his wife, and watched. So it was amazing to see that. Obviously, we started at 7 years old playing together, and here I was, like kind of 20 odd years down the line, and he was still there supporting me in France in a World Cup. So it just shows that that part of my journey was kind of so important. And if I didn't have that support, then I might have stopped playing or might not played at all. Yeah. So yeah, that's how it all started.
And were there many other girls playing football at the time, or was you the only one?
No, they join in if they maybe fancy the boys in the playground. So I was kind of really lucky in terms of the girls would kind of use me as a go-between, because I've played with all the boys all the time. So it was kind of one of those things, I guess, when you're in school and you fancy your first boy or whatever, that they were like, oh, Carly, can you speak to James? Can you speak to Craig? Come and kind of hang around the football pitch. I'd be running around, and then they'd just be stood there trying every now to join in, but they hated it. So yeah, I was lucky. One of the girls kind of played. Alex, but not to the extent that I was, and how involved I was and how much I loved it. So yeah, primary school was really key for me, and I didn't really see any other girls playing in any other team when we went to any other school. So yeah, it was. I just thought it was fun. I didn't think probably that we'd be sat here having a chat about my career as an England national when I was 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. So yeah, it was a pretty cool. Looking back now, again, it's an awesome time to reflect and just see how far I've come, I guess.
It's crazy though when you hear you speak about how it was playing on the streets out until late at night, not wanting to go in. That was what it was like for a lot of people, and probably nowadays we see that less and less and less.
It is, and it's hard, like, because I loved it. Like even when I go home now, like we still live in the same house, and it's not like I'm like, where are all kids in the street, or like why are they playing in the trees? Like we used to use a couple of trees down around the corner for goals, and like there'd be a bit in the middle of the trees that had no grass on it, because obviously that's what you understand as a kid, and you just knew that's where if we were meeting anywhere, we'd be down by the trees. Yeah, exactly. It's where we played all the things, and like see the unfortunately a lot of the old people, so most of them have passed now in the street because they were old back then, and they used to kill us for like trampling their flowers or hitting their cars or whatever.
Windows.
Yeah, exactly, and dragging me in if I'd done anything wrong. But yeah, it's just like mad that you just go home and there's not as many kids on the street as there used to be, or on the fields and stuff, and it's just mad. But I guess that's the way kind of life has changed, and lots of people do this now, and they sit online and watch videos of the likes of their favorite players playing or being interviewed, and that's how kids learn these days. So it is mad, and journeys will be different again probably in 20 years time.
Yeah, for sure. And at what point did you become a goalkeeper then? So you started outfield, and then what was the turning point for you?
So it was a complete accident. So I was down, me and my brother rode down the fields where there was where one of the goals was up, because as usual, if you can find a goal anywhere, it was like the best thing ever. So we rode down to one of the fields on our bikes, and there was a guy down there with like a group of about 9 or 10 girls playing football, and I was like, Johnny, like my brother's called John Paul, so I was like, Johnny, look, there's girls playing football. So he was like, well, why don't you just go over there and join in? And I was like, I don't think I can. And he'd seen me and my brother play football, so he wandered over and kind of just said, do you play football? So I was like, well, yeah. And he was like, well, we're holding trials down at a local village called Chesley Street next Saturday, if you'd like to come down. My name's Bob, this is my number, give it to your parents, and we'd love for you to come down. So I thought, oh, wicked cool. So like cycled home as fast as I could. So I was like, Dad, there's trials, there's girls' trials, there's a team, blah, blah, blah. So my dad was like, calm down. I was dead excited. Like, he's like, calm down. And I was like, look, this is where it is. Well, Mum was looking at me like, well, you've got no stuff really, like, you've got no kit. So we had to get some kit. So anyway, it comes to Saturday, and my mum had like, I don't know where she'd found it. And as you can see from the photos, I was a Newcastle fan. It was a Sunderland goalkeeper jumper. But it was because it was freezing. It was the middle of winter. It was like Baltic, like it was proper cold. So my mum was like, your Newcastle t-shirt's too thin, whatever, you're going to have to put this on. It had all padding down the side. Sunderland badge. I think it was like a VEC or something the sponsor was. You could probably find it if you Google it. So anyway, I traipsed down there, got down there, and because I had a goalkeeper top on, they were like, oh, do you play in goal? So I was like, well, I didn't want to say no in case they were like, oh, we don't need you anymore. So I was like, yeah, I'll go and goal. And that was it. Like I never went back outfield. I did my whole trial in a goalkeeper top. I did most of it in goal. And yeah, I just became a goalkeeper within a couple of weeks. I joined the team. So I played Chess Street, I played for under 13s. And yeah, we used to go all around the Northeast playing in tournaments. I managed to win like player of the season, manager's player of the season. As a goalkeeper, I had to lend gloves off one of the older goalkeepers. It didn't really fit me, but I didn't mind it. And she supplied me with the gloves, and it was Holly.
Yeah.
And and that was it. And I just loved it, and I never went back out pitch after that. And I played for the first team at the age of like 14 years old. I was playing with women that were like 30. I didn't know any difference. There wasn't any rules back then. You were just kind of playing and loving it. And I got spotted by Sunderland Academy, kind of scout who was watching me play in that game at 14 years old for the first team, and they signed me up at Sunderland, and I played at the academy, and that's where I met Jill and Steph and lots of the kind of Sunderland girls that have gone on the journey and made it all the way through to England seniors. So we had a real hotbed up there. But yeah, that was kind of my accidental fall into playing in goal, and I guess you could blame my mum for it, but she did a good job in a way. It was a good thing that she did, because I don't think I'd have competed with the likes of Tony and Keats and Mido playing on the wing anymore, but I've done all right. I've done all right.
It's amazing how many goalkeepers you speak to though who play at the highest level who have a similar journey, in the sense that they started out on pitch and then they made the transition over to being a goalkeeper like completely by chance, in a way. So it's amazing how often that happens. And I look at you now as a goalkeeper and the attributes that you have, and I would say from the outside looking in, there's no question that
I would have made it as an outfielder.
As a winger, the foundations that you probably created as an outfield player, working with the ball at your feet, has helped you in how you play the game now as a goalkeeper. Would you say that?
Hugely. Yeah, and I'd always say this to parents, like if I ever speak to them, like if there's any part of anyone that, and that's the thing, probably a lot of the goalkeepers, I reckon 80% of us probably never wanted to play in goal. We just somehow ended up in there. But at the same time, like if you do have a child that wants to be a goalkeeper, I'd definitely recommend of still having some sort of outfield contact time, especially in a younger age, because I think the way goalkeeping has progressed and probably will carry on progressing is that you have to be as good with your feet as you do with your hands. Like that's just the way the game's going. You are effectively not just a goalkeeper anymore. You're like, say you're the 11 players on the pitch, and you are effectively a player as well as a goalkeeper now. And I think it is so important to be comfortable with the ball at your feet, as well as, like you say, as having the ball in your hands. It's definitely important, and the way goalkeeping has progressed and probably will continue to.
Yeah, no, it's great, and we'll touch on that later on. I know, just with you've mentioned obviously the Newcastle strip in the pictures on the screen, and there's obviously a great picture there of you with your brother and sister, and then obviously in the most recent World Cup, another picture. Is that what was their support like, and I suppose the influence of them as well as your parents in terms of your career from an early age?
So my brother and sister were kind of like the people I'd drag in the garden when I wasn't allowed, like if I was grounded, or maybe we weren't allowed, or the lads couldn't come out and play. So my brother and sister, bless them, we'd just be in the garden forever and loved it. We'd have like 1v1s. We'd do like, eventually when I think I begged my mum and dad enough time to get a goal, finally, it was sticking them in goal, or I'd go in goal, and we'd just play for endless. Like the garden was completely trampled. I think the people that lived in it before us had like lovely flowers and all that. My mum tried to keep some of them, but after about 4 or 5 weeks of moving in, we completely trashed the place with the amount of footballs. The neighbours hated us because as many times as I said that I didn't go in and get the ball from next door, the footprints always gave me away across next door's garden patch. But it was just kind of what we did, like. And if looking back, I know my mum and dad my dad used to drive me everywhere. My mum didn't drive. So my dad used to spend so many nights out with me, taking me to football, different football. I was part of Sunderland Academy. I played for my club team. I think Monday, Friday nights were at Sunderland Academy. Tuesday, Thursday nights was my club team at Chester Street. And then also on a Tuesday, Thursday, when I got picked up from a scouting school by Simon Smith, and I was doing double training sessions. So I trained with him 6 till 7, and then I'd go to Chelsea Street and train with my club team. So I was out for like 4 or 5 nights a week, and then I'd have a game on or a tournament on a Sunday as such. So he was out all the time, and I just thought, well, this is great. Like my dad, we go
Yeah,
out together. This is amazing. And then I'd hear like my mum and dad like bickering or whatever because my brother and sister needed to go to gymnastics or they needed some of his time. So I think when I was about 14, 15 and I could start getting lifts, my dad was like, Carl's like, you're going to have to start finding
yeah,
your own weight and stuff. Like that's just how it's going to have to be. Your brother and sister are now
spread
kind
it.
of
Yeah,
11, 12, 13. They need to do their things as well. Like, and I was kind of like, okay, cool. And that's probably when like I started spending a little bit more time away from my dad and had to kind of grow up a little bit. I had to start ringing people and asking if they could come and pick me up for football or they could drop me off. And that's how I had to make it work because there was 3 of us and my dad couldn't be the one took me everywhere and my mum couldn't sit on the buses and take them kind of every single night. She had
yeah,
stuff to do. She had to get dinner on the table. So in that respect, I think what you don't realize, like when you're younger looking back, was how much probably the whole family invested in you. Without directly knowing it, like everyone was invested in the journey that I was on because somewhere someone was making a sacrifice, whether it was my dad late nights driving, mum not being able to maybe get the dinner or having the dinner ready, but me and dad not being in or me not being in, having to keep it warm for us. My brother and sister maybe not going to as many clubs or social clubs that they wanted to go to because my dad couldn't take them. And I guess they're the sacrifices that you don't realize when you're just like, can you take me here? Can I go here? I need this. I need new boots. I need new gloves. Like all the equipment that comes along with it. It's just something like as a kid you just don't think about. But looking back, that's probably when you get to the stage of going to a World Cup and the sacrifices you make, it all seems worthwhile. And
yeah,
you get to say, I think that's obviously why you feel so proud is you make your parents proud because they realize as well that all the sacrifice was worth it because you're living your dream and that's all I think as parents you want for your children. So
yeah.
yeah, that's probably the like the crazy part is just like you don't realize as a child how much demand you put on your parents but the whole family as well.
Yeah,
So
it's
yeah,
easy to take that for granted, isn't it?
yeah,
You just
hugely,
start to
hugely.
expect it. Yeah,
Yeah, so yeah, that was probably like a big and I know my brother and sister are so proud of me, which is amazing, but at the same time like I can't thank them enough for coming on the journey with me and the sacrifices I guess they make as kind of the siblings that have to maybe take a back seat.
yeah, for
Bless
sure.
them.
But it's great to see that picture there with them both with you in France, at the World Cup.
Yeah,
So they've seen you from the start to where you're at now, which is a brilliant journey for them to have, I suppose, been a massive part of as well.
yeah, definitely.
So no, it's really good. So you mentioned Simon Smith. So was that your first exposure to goalkeeper coaching?
Yeah, we got a little bit at the academy. So a guy called Mark, he used to come in and do a bit with us, but that was probably like Smithy was the first guy that probably give me some real structure to goalkeeping. And even now, I think when I work with anyone, I think when I worked with Ditz the first time, he was like, "You've worked with Simon Smith." I was like, "What you want about?
Yeah.
Like, how can you figure that out?" He was like, "You've just got all the characteristics of him." And it was just like, did he teach you or have you watched his videos?" And I was like, "Oh, I worked with him for about 6 months, once a week, kind of doing bits and working with the Newcastle Academy boys when I was allowed to, and that's unfortunately what happened. He had to release me because I wasn't allowed to train with him anymore. But he just taught me about kind of like the glass pane, the
Yeah,
hands,
yeah,
kind where your hands should be, your feet, you should be able to see like your feet down, all that kind of thing, like the step and dive. Like he was the guy that taught me. So I was so blessed to be able to work with him. And again, as a kid, I was buzzing because I was at Newcastle and I just thought it was the most coolest thing. And we used to turn up and sometimes we'd use the floodlights off the back off like some other pitches because he wanted us on grass and on an evening not all the pitches were like kind of floodlit and I'd be like covered in mud but I just used to muck in like I just didn't have any fear. I just loved like diving around. I loved learning. We used to do like learning to dive and we'd hold each other's hands and you could see like the lads
yeah.
being like, oh my god, who's going to hold hands with the girl, like which was obvious. And obviously I was dead nervous as well because you'd be holding each other's hands, you'd be in your gloves and that, but you'd have to learn how to like dive and collapse and all those kind of small things. But it was a look into kind of what being a proper goalkeeper was, or else like I'd go to my club and you'd get someone's dad who'd kick balls at you, or you wouldn't have any kind of warmth. You just stand in goal and wait for the ball to kind of come to you, whether it was they were doing shooting or it'd be a small game. But I think without that kind of I don't know, 6 months of blocks of work that I did with Simon, I don't think I'd probably be halfway down the line of what I was. I was again so lucky. And even to have a goalkeeping coach at the academy was brilliant, because he was then able, when I got older, to work with me at senior at Sunderland as well. So Mark Moore, he was great for me. And these are just guys that were just giving up their time on an evening. They'd have normal jobs, and they'd come down, he'd put his gloves on and kind of help me learn. But yeah, working with Simon, and he still keeps in contact with me now when I see him. He sent me messages before and after the World Cup, during the World Cup and stuff, and just said how kind of proud he was of how far I've gotten. And yeah, like when I see him, it's just, I don't know, he was kind of like without him knowing it, a massive role model, because like I said, without him, I don't think I'd probably be as far as I am.
Yeah, and that's great. And I think it's always nice I'm sure Simon would appreciate hearing that, but from a coach's point of view, to hear that you've had that impact on a player from a young age to get to where they've got to. So I think that would be great for him to hear.